It had been a long week. Rachel had been unusually short with me, even more than usual. I'd tried not to take it personally. My son Luke always asked me to be patient with her, said she had a lot on her plate, 'cause she didn't mean the tone she used or the way she left the room every time I entered. But this time, something felt different. She'd barely spoken 2 words to me all week, and Luke had started avoiding eye contact. Then, Friday morning, Rachel announced we'd be going for a drive together. She smiled too widely and said she wanted to take me to a small town north of us to check out a community center that might be a good fit. A good fit for what? I didn't ask. I just nodded and got my coat. I had learned over time not to push back when she tried to help. We drove for over 2 hours. I recognized nothing. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. Fields of snow line the highway, broken only by the occasional gas station and frozen trees. Rachel barely said a word the whole drive. Her eyes stayed fixed on the road, jaw tight. I asked once where we were going, and she said calmly, "You'll see." Eventually, she turned off onto a narrow, unpaved road. The tires crunched against the snow, and the cold started to seep through the car doors. It was well below freezing, and the wind picked up as she stopped the car in front of what looked like an abandoned bus shelter. No buildings nearby, no people. Nothing but snow and silence. She reached over and popped the trunk. I looked at her, confused. "I think this is a good place to part ways for a little while," she said, finally turning to face me. Her voice was even emotionless. "Luke and I talked about it. This setup with you staying at our place, it's not working anymore. You're costing too much." Couldn't believe what I was hearing. Costing too much. Your medications, your meals, the heating bills, the guest room, it's been adding up. And honestly, we need that space for the baby. There was no baby. Not yet. Just plans. I stared at her, stunned. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if it was the cold or what she was saying. "I don't have anywhere to go, Rachel." "You'll figure it out," she said. Then she reached into the back. Seaton grabbed my suitcase already packed hand, set it on the side of the road. "You packed my things." My voice cracked. "Luke helped. We thought it'd be easier this way. No drama." She shut the trunk, got back in the car, and without another word, drove away. I stood there for several minutes, unable to move. My breath came out in thick clouds. I looked around. No traffic, no houses, nothing. My gloves weren't in my pocket. I reached for the suitcase and unzipped it, digging through until I found them. My hands were already stiff, and my feet were beginning to numb. I sat on the bench inside the bus shelter, though it offered little protection. I tried to call Luke, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I texted him. "Rachel just left me on the road. Please call me." No reply. An hour passed. Then another. The cold was unbearable. I opened my wallet, $5 and a bus pass that wouldn't get me out of the county. My phone battery was at 12%. I turned it off to save power. Eventually, a pickup truck pulled into view. The driver slowed down when he saw me on the bench, rolled his window down and asked, "Ma'am, are you all right?" I wanted to say no, but I couldn't make the words come. He stepped out, walked over, and crouched beside me. "Do you need help?" I nodded. He offered his coat, then called someone on his phone an hour later. I was sitting in a small diner, 2 towns over, sipping weak coffee with shaking hands. The waitress, Clara, brought me a bowl of soup and refused to let me pay. She just looked at me and said, "You look like you've been through it." I stayed silent. What could I say? My own family left me on the side of the road like trash. I had lived with Luke and Rachel for 2 years, ever since my arthritis got worse and I couldn't keep up with rent on my own. I'd given up my apartment, my privacy, and most of my savings to help them when they said they were struggling. I paid for groceries half the time, even paid off one of their credit card bills when they said they were behind. I didn't complain. I wanted to be useful. I slept that night in the back room of the diner on a cot with extra blankets, Clara. Found in the supply closet, the next morning, I turned my phone back on. 8 messages from Luke. Where are you? Did you leave? Rachel told me you got out of the car before she could explain everything. Mom, you can't just disappear like that. Are you trying to make us look bad? You've got people worried? Just come back. Let's talk. You're acting really irrational right now. I stared at the screen. Irrational. She left me on the side of the road in a snowstorm. I blocked his number. Clara gave me the contact of a legal aid clinic nearby. I called and scheduled an appointment. Then I made my way to a small motel and paid for 3 nights up front. It wasn't much, but it was warm and private. I pulled out my folder of personal documents. Things I had kept in a drawer in Luke's house: bank statements, tax records, medical bills. As I flipped through them, I noticed a few things were missing, specifically the most recent printouts from my pension account, the account Luke had offered to help manage last year. I logged in online. That's when I realized it. There had been multiple withdrawals over the last 6 months. Thousands of dollars. Transferred to a joint account. An account I didn't recognize, but I recognized the name attached to it. Luke S. Hamilton, that my own son had access, and Rachel. Her name was listed as secondary on the account. I felt the cold again. Not from the weather, but from inside, they thought. I was gone, disposed of, helpless. But I wasn't, not yet. I stayed in that motel room for 3 more nights. I didn't open the curtains much. I only left the room to pick up something to eat from the diner or to buy groceries from the corner store across the road. My body hurt not just from the arthritis, but from the kind of exhaustion that comes when your heart sinks into the floor. It doesn't want to get up again. Rachel and Luke had tried to make me disappear. I didn't even think I'd figure anything out. And honestly, for a while, I probably wouldn't have. I trusted them. I let Luke handle the online logins because I thought I was just old-fashioned. I let Rachel order my prescriptions and set up the utilities because she said it was easier to have everything in one place. I believed it was their way of helping. I never thought they'd use that trust against me. But they did. And now I needed help. The legal aid clinic Clara had recommended wasn't anything fancy, just a plain brick building 2 blocks from the motel with a paper sign taped to the front door that read "Appointments Only." I called that morning and got lucky someone had canceled. A woman on the phone, Dina, said she could see me at 3 o'clock. I gathered everything I had. The bank printouts I had just downloaded, my social security statements, the pension account, access history, a list of medications and their costs, plus notes on dates I remembered giving Rachel cash or covering a household bill. I made a checklist in a spiral notebook. Every detail I could remember, I wrote down . By the time I arrived at the clinic, I was tired. I hadn't slept well. I hadn't eaten much. And I was still shaking from the idea that maybe, just maybe, I'd let my own son steal from me without. Even knowing it, Donna greeted me with a kind smile. She was in her late 40s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. Her office had 2 chairs, a desk, and a coffee machine in the corner. She offered me a cup. I said yes. I told her everything. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. I was afraid that if I started, I wouldn't be able to stop. She didn't interrupt me, not once. When I finished, she looked down at the documents, flipping through them slowly. How long ago did they begin managing these accounts? She asked. About 10 months ago? Maybe a year. Did you ever give them power of attorney? I shook my head. No, never signed anything. Did you ever give them verbal permission to move funds? I know, not for this. I never even knew that account existed. She nodded, wrote something down, and kept reading. After a while, she looked up. What they've done isn't just unethical, she said plainly. It might be criminal, but I need to see more to be sure. The transfers, the dates. The linked accounts, it all needs to be mapped out. Can we reverse it? I asked. Maybe, she said. But first we have to stop the bleeding, cancel their access, shut down what we can. Move the rest somewhere safe. That's when she introduced me to a financial analyst named Paul, who volunteered once a week at the clinic. He had thinning hair, wore a checkered shirt tucked into worn jeans, and spoke with a soft voice. He didn't ask many personal questions. He just asked for the account numbers and logins, then said he'd help me set up new passwords and secure the rest of my funds. It was the first time in months. Felt like someone was on my side. Over the next 3 days, we worked on creating a timeline. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every suspicious transaction. Paul helped me draft a letter to my pension provider, requesting full details on all access history and security changes. Dina drafted a letter informing Luke and Rachel that I was revoking all informal access and freezing shared accounts pending legal review, but I didn't send the letters yet. I wasn't ready to let them know what I knew. Instead, took the documents back to the motel and reread them over and over. I needed to be absolutely sure. I didn't want to accuse my own son unless I had proof that even he couldn't deny. On the 4th day, Paul called me and said something had come in. He'd discovered a recurring transfer, $1,800 every 2 weeks. For the last 4 months, going from my pension into a secondary checking account I had never seen before. That account was in Luke's name and Rachel's. The account had been created shortly after. I moved into their house. That was all I needed. That night, I stared at my phone for a long time. I didn't want to call Luke. I didn't want to hear his voice trying to explain this away, or worse, pretending it wasn't what it looked like. So I didn't call. Instead, I opened my own bank app and scheduled the full pension to redirect into a brand new account under my name, only one. That neither of them knew existed. I canceled the automatic deposits to their utility accounts. I shut down my old debit card and requested a new one with a different number. I removed their phone numbers from the emergency contact section of my Medicare file. It felt like cutting ties one stitch at a time. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, it rang again. This time, it was Luke's number. I answered. "Mom," he said, his voice tense. "Why are the accounts frozen?" Said nothing. Rachel just tried to pay the mortgage and the payment bounced. "Did you do something?" "I froze the accounts," I said. "Why?" "You know why, Luke?" A long pause. Then he said, "You don't understand how hard things have been for us." Rachel had to stop working after her carpal tunnel surgery. The mortgage is under my name. You were just helping. You said it was okay. No, I didn't, I said. I never said it was okay to move my pension without asking. I never said it was okay to leave me by the road like garbage. That was Rachel's idea, he said quickly. I didn't agree with it. Didn't stop it either. Another pause? "We can fix this," he said. "Just come home. Let's talk about this like adults." "I'm not coming back, Mom. We're family." "No, Luke," I said. "You stopped being family when you used me. I'm not stupid. I might have been naive, but not anymore." I hung up. He didn't call back. That afternoon, I filed a fraud report with the pension office and started the process of requesting a full audit. Dina helped me draft a formal complaint to the local financial oversight board. Paul offered to testify if needed. I wasn't going to take them to court. Not yet. But I was going to make sure they never got access to another dollar of mine again. And if they pushed me, I had all the proof I needed. After I ended the call with Luke, I sat on the edge of the motel bed and didn't move for a while. I just stared at the floor. It was strange how fast a person could go from believing they were loved to knowing they were just tolerated, maybe even resented. I had spent months in their house trying to be invisible. I cleaned when no one asked, cooked when they were too tired, watched Rachel's cat when they traveled. I never argued. I never raised my voice. I always made sure I wasn't in the way. But it hadn't mattered. None of it had. They had already decided I was a burden, and now that I'd frozen the accounts, I knew the backlash would come. I just didn't know how fast. By the end of that day, Rachel had sent 6 text messages. The first 2 were calm. "Hey, I think something's wrong with the account. Can you look into it? Luke said your pension deposit didn't come through. Is it a tech thing?" Then the tone shifted. "Did you mess with the accounts? 'Cause we're trying to pay bills and everything is locked. You're acting completely out of line right now. We've bent over backwards for you, and this is how you repay us. If you're trying to punish us, congratulations. You've succeeded." I didn't respond to any of them. I went back to the clinic the next morning. Paul had called and said he found more details. I met him and Dina in the back office again, and this time they looked even more serious than before. He placed a printed page in front of me, double quotes this. He said, pointing to a highlighted section, "is an application for a home equity loan. Filed in your name, but here's the problem. You don't own a home." I stared at it. My name, my social security number, my birthday. Everything matched, Paul went on. They used your information to co-sign a second mortgage on their house 6 months ago. They did it online. It's technically a shared property now, based on how the paperwork was worded. It gives them higher loan eligibility. I felt sick. You're saying they took out a loan? Q? And used me to do it? He nodded. And I'm almost sure the signatures were copied digitally. It's hard to prove intent in some cases, but we have enough to start a forensic review. You never signed this, right? Course not, I said. I had no idea. Dina leaned forward. You have 2 choices. You can contact the loan company directly and report the signature as unauthorized and then file a formal fraud claim. Or if you're ready, we can move forward with a legal case. I didn't answer right away. I needed to think. I needed to understand how far they had gone. I left the office with copies of everything and went back to the motel. I couldn't even eat dinner that night. My stomach wouldn't let me. Around 10 p.m., Luke called again. I didn't pick up. Then Rachel called. I picked up on the 4th ring. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to hear how she was going to spin this. Finally, she said, "What are you doing?" "You know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "This is insane," she snapped. "You're ruining everything." "I trusted you," I said flatly. "I let you into every part of my life. You helped me manage my money. And then you used it to apply for loans and move money behind my back." There was a pause. "You're confused," she said. "We didn't do anything you didn't agree to." "Ah? Show me one message, one recording, one document where I said you could put my name on your house." Rachel raised her voice. "Do you think we did this out of greed? We're struggling. Luke's job isn't stable. Our medical bills wiped out our savings. We needed help. Then ask for help. Don't take it." There was another long silence. Then she changed tactics. "You do realize you're ruining your relationship with your only son?" "He's devastated." "No," I said. "He's embarrassed, not devastated. And I'm done feeling guilty about that." Rachel let out a bitter laugh. "Well, good luck living on your own. Maybe that miserable motel room is where you belong after all." She hung up. I stared at the phone for a while and then placed it face down on the nightstand. That night, I barely slept. But the decision was made. I returned to the clinic the next morning and told Dina to move forward with the fraud claim. We sent the first formal letter to the loan company that afternoon. The second letter went to Luke and Rachel Lan, official notice that I had removed all consent and would be challenging all unauthorized transactions in court if needed, for the first time in weeks. I felt something that resembled control. That feeling didn't last long. 3 days later, I walked back to the motel after picking up groceries and found an envelope taped to the door of my room. Inside was a letter, no return address, typed. "We don't want this to get ugly. Stop the legal threats and let us handle things like a family. Or we'll have no choice but to escalate." No signature. But I knew who it came from. I brought the letter to Dina the next morning. She was furious. "This is intimidation," she said. "Don't respond. We'll document everything. I'll notify the clinic's legal partners, and we'll get extra protection in case they try something stupid. I don't think they'll do anything violent, I said quietly. No, she agreed. But they might try something reckless. And they did. That Friday morning, my pension deposit never arrived. Paul checked with the bank. Somehow, the deposit had been redirected again to the old shared account. What does that mean? I asked. It means someone used credentials to change it back. But I changed the passwords. They may have accessed your email or had stored credentials. We need to close that account entirely. We'll move everything to a new bank, new logins, two-factor authentication, everything fresh. The next 3 hours were a scramble, shutting down accounts, locking cards, speaking to the pension office by phone, and submitting new documentation. Paul had to physically walk with me to the new bank branch and stay while I set up everything from scratch. By the end of the day, I had a new account, a new debit card, and I had initiated a full recovery request for the missing deposit. Luke and Rachel had managed to hijack one final transaction, but that would be the last. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to them, but to myself. I wrote down everything they had. Taken. Everything I had given and everything I had left. I wasn't sure yet if I would take them to court, but I knew one thing for sure. They would never touch another dollar of mine again. And they would never be allowed back into my life, not as long as I still had a voice to say no the week after. I secured the new account was quiet. Too quiet. I knew Luke and Rachel wouldn't let things end that easily. They were the type who only stopped pushing when they had no more leverage left. And right now, they thought they still had some. They didn't know I had locked everything down with new credentials and frozen every shared asset. They didn't know that I had filed a fraud report with the loan company and formally revoked all informal authorizations. And most importantly, they didn't know I had spent the last 2 weeks documenting everything: emails, bank statements, voice messages, even text threads. So when the phone calls stopped, I knew they were planning something. It came 2 days later. Clara, the waitress who'd helped me that first night, approached me while I was having breakfast at the diner. She looked uncomfortable. Miss Hamilton, I probably shouldn't get involved, she said softly, but someone came in here yesterday afternoon asking about you. I lowered my fork. Who? A woman, dark hair, tall, pretty sharp. She said she was your daughter, said you had a fall and might be confused lately. My blood went cold. That was Rachel, I said. She's my daughter-in-law. Clara looked down. She left a few flyers, said to call this number if anyone saw you. I threw them out. I didn't like the way she talked about you. I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked, what exactly did she say? Clara hesitated. She told the manager you might say things that aren't true, that you were having memory problems, that you thought people were stealing from you, but it wasn't real. I nodded slowly. It made sense now. They were trying to get ahead of me. If they couldn't control me, they'd try to discredit me. That's when I knew they weren't done. They were escalating. I thanked Clara, left a tip, and walked straight to the legal clinic. Dina was waiting in her office when I got there. I told her everything. She didn't look surprised. They're building a counter-narrative, she said. If you take legal action, they're going to try to say you're not competent, that you misunderstood what you signed or forgot what you agreed to. But I didn't sign anything. Doesn't matter to them. If they get in front of the story and create enough doubt, they can cause delays or block access to some resources while things are investigated. So what do? We fight fire with documentation. Over the next 2 days, I had a formal cognitive evaluation done by a medical professional. The clinic helped me schedule it. It was thorough memory recall, attention span, reasoning. The doctor wrote a full report that said I was mentally sharp, fully capable of managing my finances and legal decisions. I also had my signature analyzed by a certified handwriting expert. We submitted the mortgage documents to be reviewed. The initial feedback was promising. The signatures on the loan didn't match my natural writing flow. Meanwhile, Paul helped me file a dispute with the credit bureaus, flagging the mortgage as fraudulent and freezing all credit activity related to my name. It was slow, tedious, but necessary. And then came the next wave. On Sunday morning, I received a message from an unknown number. You should be ashamed of how you're treating your son. He's always cared for you. Then another. Rachel told me what happened. You're lucky to have a family at all. Then more. Dozens of them, cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Church acquaintances, a woman named Aunt Lydia who hadn't spoken to me since. 1,998. Every single one of them had one thing in common. They were defending Luke and Rachel and accusing me of being cruel, unstable, or ungrateful. That's when I understood what Rachel had done. She'd launched a campaign behind my back. Probably told everyone I'd lost it, that I'd turned on my family after everything they'd done for me. She played the victim and made sure no one asked for evidence. Dina said it was typical behavior in cases of financial exploitation. They rely on shame and silence, she explained. They know most people won't speak up, so they tell the story first and dare you to contradict it. But I wasn't staying silent anymore. I opened my laptop and wrote a post on my personal Facebook page. I hadn't used it in years, but I knew Rachel still monitored it, and I knew most of the people messaging me would see what I wrote. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I just laid out the facts. I lived with my son and daughter-in-law for 2 years. During that time, I contributed over $24,000 to household expenses, paid for groceries, covered bills, and gave additional funds when asked. Without my knowledge, they added my name to a home loan to qualify for more credit. They redirected my pension without my consent. When I confronted them, I was abandoned on a rural road in the middle of winter. I now live independently. I am of sound mind and have legal documentation to confirm this. I am not seeking sympathy. I am setting the record straight. Within minutes, the post began receiving comments. Some were defensive, others were confused. But many more than I expected were supportive. People I hadn't spoken to in years sent private messages. Former coworkers from a job I'd held 15 years ago. One said, I always knew something was off about that daughter-in-law of yours. Another, if you need help, I'm a lawyer now. Just say the word. The narrative was beginning to shift. I printed the comments and brought them to Dina the next day. We added them to the file. Meanwhile, the handwriting expert finalized his report. The signatures had been manipulated, digitally altered. There was enough to open a criminal investigation. But instead of reporting it to the police immediately, we sent one final letter. This time it came directly from the legal clinic. It was addressed to Luke and Rachel. It included copies of the cognitive evaluation, handwriting analysis, and pension audit. It detailed every fraudulent transaction. And it ended with a very simple statement. Unless all funds are repaid in full within 15 business days, we will proceed with legal action for financial abuse and identity fraud. I mailed it myself. 4 days later, a transfer hit my new account. $14,500. No note, no message. No apology, just the money. But it wasn't enough. Not even close. I wasn't doing this just for repayment anymore. I was doing it because for the first time in years, I realized I didn't have to accept being treated like I didn't matter. They wanted to sell a lie about me, but I had decided that I'd rather burn the whole script than play a role in it. The money they sent back was a clear attempt to calm me down. A way to say, we gave some of it back. Now drop it. But I wasn't looking for partial apologies or half corrections. I wasn't looking for closure that came with conditions. I was looking for something Rachel and Luke had never once offered me in 2 years of living under their roof. Accountability. The $14,500 was less than half of what had been taken. Even if it had been the full amount, it wouldn't erase what they had done signing my name onto loan documents without consent, rerouting my pension deposits, and abandoning me on a frozen roadside. I met with Dina the following morning and showed her the deposit. She scanned the bank record and asked, "You want to return it?" No, I said, but I'm not stopping either. She nodded. Good. That same day, we moved forward, with the next step filing an official claim with the district attorney's office. Dina had prepared a comprehensive complaint package over 80 pages long. It included all the documentation, the fraudulent account activity, the forged loan papers, the recorded call with Luke where he admitted I hadn't consented, the cognitive evaluation, and the written threats. We submitted everything that week. I also received a call from someone at the state's Elder Protection Agency. They'd been referred by the legal clinic after the fraud report was filed. The woman on the phone was kind and professional. She asked questions, basic ones at first, then more detailed. I answered everything. I didn't want to leave any room for doubt. When I told her about the roadside abandonment, she paused. They left you there alone, in the cold? Yes. Did you report it to law enforcement? No, I didn't know if anyone would take me seriously. We take it seriously, she said. You may not realize it, but that qualifies as elder neglect under our statute. The next day, I received a visit at the motel. 2 investigators from Adult Protective Services sat with me for nearly 3 hours. They documented every detail, from the money to the isolation tactics to the false statements Rachel had spread about my mental state. When I mentioned the anonymous letter taped to my door, they asked to take it into evidence. I handed it over, then, as if on cue, Luke showed up. He didn't knock. He just walked into the motel lobby, asked for me by name, and waited near the vending machines. I saw him through the glass as I was leaving. I asked the app's investigator if I should avoid contact. She said, "You're not under any restriction, but don't go anywhere private with him. If you talk, do it here." So I approached him. He looked tired, not sad, not sorry, just worn out, like someone whose plans were falling apart faster than he could patch them together. "I got your lawyer's letter," he said. "I know. This is going too far, Mom." "No, Luke, it already went too far. I'm just cleaning up the mess." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "We never meant to hurt you. You meant to use me. It's over and over again. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice. We thought you were okay with helping. Helping is one thing, stealing is another." He looked around and lowered his voice. "Rachel's falling apart. She's not sleeping. She's saying you're trying to destroy us." I looked him in the eye. "I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I'm just making sure you don't do this to someone else." He looked like he was about to argue again, but then he just sighed and said, "I don't even recognize you anymore." That hit me in a strange way, because the truth was, I didn't recognize him either. When he walked out, one of the investigators turned to me and said, "If they're still showing up unannounced, we can request a restraining order." I didn't answer, not yet. I needed to think. The following week, things escalated again. Rachel filed a petition to gain emergency financial conservatorship over me. It was a desperate move, but it was a legal one, and that made it dangerous. She submitted a request to the local court claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. She used the same lie she'd told at the diner. Confusion, paranoia, forgetfulness. She even attached a sworn statement from a neighbor, someone I barely knew, who claimed I had once wandered outside without shoes and didn't know what day it was. Dina called me immediately. "We're going to respond," she said. "But this is serious. If she wins, she'll gain legal access to everything." Can she really do that? The court believes her version. Yes, but we have the documentation. We're filing an emergency counter motion with the doctor's report, the clinic records, and a sworn statement from you. And we'll request an immediate hearing. It was set for 2 days later. I sat in that courtroom next to Dina and watched as Rachel and Luke entered, dressed like they were going to Sunday service. Rachel wore a modest sweater and pearl earrings. Luke looked like he hadn't shaved in a week. They looked exactly how they wanted the judge to see them: concerned family members trying to protect the poor. Confused elder. Their lawyer stood and presented the case first. He spoke about my recent behavior, the disorientation, the impulsive financial decisions, and the threats of lawsuits. Then it was our turn. Dina handed the judge our folder. She calmly walked through every step. The forged loan documents, the pension transfers, the anonymous threats, the cognitive report. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize anything. She just let the truth sit there, plainly and fully. Then she asked the court to allow me to speak. I stood slowly. My knees ached, my back throbbed, but my voice was steady. I'm not confused. I'm not irrational. I'm not trying to hurt my son or his wife. I'm protecting myself. I've lived long enough to know when something is wrong. And this what they did to me is wrong. The judge looked at Rachel. She couldn't hold eye contact after reviewing the file. The judge denied the petition and scolded Rachel's attorney for filing without proper cause. He issued a protective order preventing any financial activity involving my name without written consent from a third party. As we walked out of the courtroom, Rachel passed me without a word. Luke didn't even look up. Outside, Dina said quietly. That went as well as it could have gone. I nodded, but I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Because even though the judge had ruled in my favor, I knew they weren't done. People like Rachel don't stop because they're told to. They stop when they lose what they were trying to steal. After the court hearing, something in me shifted. I didn't feel angry anymore. Not even tired. Just done. Done with explaining, done with hoping they'd come around, done with waiting for things to return to something they never really were. The ruling didn't just block them from touching my money. It proved that I hadn't imagined anything. It proved I hadn't overreacted. And it sent a message to them, to the people they'd manipulated. And to myself that I was still capable of protecting what I had left. The next morning, I moved out of the motel. A woman from the Senior Resource Center had found me an opening in an independent living complex on the edge of town. It wasn't a nursing home. It was a small apartment in a quiet building with other residents my age. Each unit had its own kitchen and bathroom, and there was a common room downstairs where people played cards or read newspapers. No one asked personal questions. No one assumed I was weak just because my knees cracked when I stood up. I paid the first 3 months up front with money from my pension, the one that was finally safe. On my first morning there, I made oatmeal in my own pot and watched the snow through my window. It wasn't silent like the roadside had been. It was peaceful, and then the final letter came. It wasn't from Luke. It was from a law office I didn't recognize. They were representing him and Rachel. Inside the envelope was a formal request for mutual dismissal of all legal proceedings, financial grievances, and defamatory claims in the interest of preserving family unity. They wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They were offering to send the remaining money, $11,800, on the condition that I agreed not to take further legal action or speak publicly about what happened. Dina read it with a blank expression. Then she said, "This is an attempt to bury what they did. If you sign this, it's over. You'll get the money, but you won't be able to sue them or even talk about it." I didn't even need to think about it. "Tell them to keep it," I said. She smiled a little. "I was hoping you'd say that." A few days later, Luke sent one final message. It's just a text. "I guess you got what you wanted. Hope it was worth it." I didn't reply because yes, I did get what I wanted. I got the truth. I got my accounts back. I got my name cleared, and I got my life. What was left of it finally back under my control. Weeks passed. I started going to the group meals downstairs. Clara from the diner came to visit once. We sat in the common room and talked for hours. She brought me lemon muffins and said the place suited me. I agreed. One morning, I received a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a framed photo of me and Luke from 15 years ago. It had been taken at a cookout. I was laughing. He was hugging me. There was a note taped to the back. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to remember we weren't always like this." I placed the photo in a drawer and closed it. I didn't throw it away, but I wasn't putting it on display either. He had made his choices. So had I. I began volunteering twice a week at the community center. I helped other seniors review their bills, their benefits, their bank statements. I sat with women who'd been taken advantage of by family and didn't know how to say it out loud. I listened. I told them what to watch for, and when they asked how I knew so much, I just said, experience. That winter, I didn't send a Christmas card to Luke or Rachel. I didn't call or email. I didn't leave a message on social media. I had nothing left to say to them. But I did send one thing. I mailed them a certified letter from Dina's office, confirming that my accounts were now protected by a legal guardian ad litem, that all previous authorizations had been revoked permanently, and that any future attempts to access or manipulate my finances would be met with immediate criminal charges. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary, and it was final. Months later, I overheard two neighbors talking in the common room about their kids visiting for Easter. One of them asked me if my family would be stopping by. I smiled and said no, but that's all right. I don't need to be around people who show up only when it's convenient. It wasn't bitterness, just clarity, because the truth is, being discarded by people who claimed to love you hurts. But learning you don't need them to live well, that's where freedom begins, and no amount of snow, silence, or stolen money could ever take that away from me again.